Welcome to our Fireside chat. This is a little bit of an experiment, but we thought it would be fun. We're going to spend the next little while talking with Wynn about the liver and all the differences that we can all make in it, and the kinds of people we think need to come together to advance the field. So just to sort of set the stage, I thought I would embarrass him a tiny bit and say a little bit about his illustrious career. You see behind, we have pictures going of former symposia. We collaborated with Luba, his wife, because they had collected pictures for a recent big birthday, which I won't name the number, but it was a lovely big birthday celebration. So you have to pay attention to the audience. We'll send it to you. But they're pictures that we've sort of assembled over the years. So by way of background, I think Wynn trained as a medical doctor in medicine and hepatology. He spent 29 years at Albert Einstein, Tufts, the NIH. He was an early supporter of the American Liver Foundation, which is why the symposium has been named in his honor. He's published over 450 research papers and reviews, and he's been a thought leader for the field of liver biology. I often refer to him as the father of liver biology. And I first met him when I spoke in the symposium. I was doing the math. I realized that, so I started graduate school in 1991, so I fell in love with the liver 26 years ago. And you had already started the symposium by then, so you had already contributed so much when I just even first met the liver. So it's just a real thrill to be able to spend this time with you. Every time I talk to Wynn about the liver, I learn a new gem of some unpublished, interesting story about poetry or an experiment that someone did where the liver heats up with a thermocouple, or how mollusks have out of pancreas, or always something new that I hadn't stumbled upon before. So we were hoping some of that would come out today. So first I'll just say welcome and see if Wolfram has anything else to add.
I think especially for our trainees in the room to appreciate, and as Sangeeta sort of listed all of Wynn's successes and accolades, to appreciate the history and where liver biology research and hepatology in the United States had its origin, and to actually learn it and see it firsthand, and appreciate the enormous impact and progress Wynn's work and that of others over the years has had on the field and on people's lives.
Yeah. So the first topic that we thought we would talk about is how liver disease has evolved over your career and our careers. I feel like even when I met the liver, it was so much after you. A lot of people didn't study it. I think in recent years, it's become a little bit of a hot topic because lots of things get delivered to the liver. Lots of diseases actually have their origin at the liver, but I think for a long time it was understudied. And it's been really a pretty exciting time in some ways, but the needs for patients are still significant. So what do you think about the sort of state of the field and the science that has impacted the clinical advances that we have had?
Well, we're living in what probably is the most exciting time ever in science. And to some extent, we're overwhelmed by the excitement because new things, new discoveries from many diverse fields just keep accumulating, and it's virtually impossible to sort of keep up or to accommodate to those things. That was not the case. The first liver meeting I ever went to was in 1957 or 8. There were less than 100 people, and you were told to come with a couple of slides and give a 5-minute talk. There was no program. Hans Popper, who was the real patron saint of world hepatology, called on people. You got up and you gave your 5-minute talk. And it was almost all pathologically oriented. And this is the point I'm going to make. This was the dawn of the big impact period of biochemistry in the 50s and 60s. And its impact in liver really was very delayed because the field itself was oriented much toward pathology. It was really a direct lineage from 19th century French and German expertise in lining up signs and symptoms with pathologic, and that was the status of the field. Nothing was known about viruses. We didn't know a virus. They talked about viruses, but hepatitis A virus, and of course hepatitis B virus wasn't discovered until Bloomberg in 1963. Liver function tests, and when you look at it, are really kind of amazing because you mix things and if they looked cloudy, that meant something. It was really very vague and a huge breakthrough. Possibly one of the greatest breakthroughs in modern hepatology was made by a medical student. Arthur Carmen, was a medical student at New York University, and he's the one who had the bright idea to measure what we now call AST and ALT in patients initially with myocardial infarction. Then they discovered that the false positives with regard to the heart were because there were people with liver disease. So the introduction of the transaminase for the very first time gave something that had some specificity for liver function in an acute sense. That was a major accomplishment. Now, the other thing I would point out that the key discoveries, I think, were not made by hepatologists in those days. So Arthur was as I said, a medical student, later a sort of clinical pathologist. Barry Bloomberg was a rheumatologist who was interested in worldwide sociology. That's led to hepatitis B. Harvey Alter was concerned with the blood bank and was a hematologist, and he really put the finger on the existence of something that was not A, not B, and worked very hard to try and identify C, but he was scooped by modern technology when Houghton, 10 years later, discovered hepatitis C, and we were off to the races with more specific diagnostic things. The other thing that comes to mind is diseases that today we're very worried about, particularly the NASH problem and primary liver cancer, were virtually unknown in those days. Liver disease was something people were hush-hush about because it was tied in with alcohol. And when the American Liver Foundation was first founded, one of the hardest things was to overcome the public resistance. And it was the discoveries that I mentioned that did a lot to begin to open that door, and the realization that liver disease encompassed all ages, huge pediatric problems. Now, the things that we focus on today, the NASH business and liver cancer, as I said, were virtually unknown in the 50s and 60s here. In fact, if a patient had a primary liver cancer, they were presented at grand medical rounds because it was such a rarity. But if you lived in Asia at that time, if a patient had a myocardial infarction, they were presented at grand medical rounds because everybody had a liver cancer, not everybody. Well, that's all changed, in part due to global dynamics, population change, viruses, and so forth. So it's a changing liver world. The problems are still the same: fibrosis, regeneration, development, but the tools for looking at it are just phenomenal. And I call your attention, particularly the young people here, if you really want an interesting experience and you have few hours to kill. Look at some of the clinical descriptions from the French and German great clinicians of the late 19th century, how they came to conclusions that led to the definition of what we call cirrhosis and hepatitis and all, just by the clinical experience of it all. And that isn't meant to be romantic. It's meant to point out that the clinical aspect of it is critical in this molecular era. And the closer we get to almost atomic hepatology, the more the clinical thing is there. And this is one of the big challenges and problems, which I guess we're going to talk about. And that's also why we have the Brooklyn Bridge up as an early slide, because in the previous 27 renditions of this symposium, the whole idea was to build a bridge between clinical problems and real basic sciences, with the idea that once you build a bridge, life is never the same on either side.